Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we're back with another Mythic Plus, this time Shrine of the Storm +6. I did a bunch of Mythic Plus on the stream this weekend, and as you guys saw, hopefully on the stream, I got my key up to +6, so I figured I might as well do it off stream. Probably won't have time for anything more than that, but this is still +6, so only one affix. We have Raging, and I'm very happy that it was this dungeon. Now, I did a video on Mythic Plus last week, or whatever it was, 2 weeks ago now, and we got Motherlode, which is another very unique dungeon for kind of the same reasons. I feel like these dungeons have a lot of mechanics tied to the trash, and it is Raging, so not necessarily the easiest trash solo affix, but of course, with only tyrannical and not fortified, things don't, they don't scare you as much as they could. Now, the reason this dungeon's trash can be a pain is not necessarily because I expect to die to it a lot like I might on other dungeons, especially maybe like King's Rest or Motherlode. This one is going to just take a long time to kill. You see that green cast that mob in the back there doing? That's a big heal. These mobs are going to do a lot of healing. And then there's these Templar guys. They're going to put up a shield. I think they just passively reduce damage to everybody in the pack that they're in. So, you know, that odd-shaped pack that we pulled there of like 7 mobs, a couple non-elites, if I brought that big guy, that Templar, in there with them, they would have just died a lot slower. And that's really a big problem in this dungeon outright. Now, one of the most biggest offenders of it, that is, we're actually able to skip. That's a pack that you can kind of see directly in front of where my character is now, kind of that way now, directly in front of where my character is facing. You can skip that pack, and this was something that I didn't realize when I was doing this on Zero all those months ago, and Heroic all the last few months. But you definitely can skip that. You just got to hug the left pillar there, and you don't need it for count. So that's a good thing, because that is 3 of the healer mobs. But there you see another type of mob, that big water elemental, which looks amazing, by the way. I really like the new elementals, but yeah, I do not like getting knocked up in the air and not being able to heal. So not the most fun thing. You can actually, it is actually a stun. At least it used to be. I didn't try it in this pull, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And then again, another Templar kind of roaming. If you aggro him at the right time, you can get him solo, but if you aggro him at the wrong time, you might get him with the pack we just fought, which is obviously going to make it die a lot slower. Or if you aggro him at the really wrong time, you might end up aggroing the stuff on the left side of the room there as well, which is pretty much GG. You might as well just reset it. Yeah, so I don't know. This dungeon, I think, is going to give people fits. I don't know what it was like on teaming. If you guys did do it on teaming last week, especially, it was teaming fortified. Yeah, so that would have been an interesting one to see, just like the Motherlode. But yeah, realistically, I think this dungeon is going to be... I hate to keep comparing everything to Seat, right? But I was looking at that. Something funny happened there. So that when he rises up, he knocks you back. And the monk actually got knocked back, as you see in chat, got knocked back so far he got thrown off the platform. Now, I don't know if that's intentional or if it's bugged. He's claiming that he got knocked back way further than everyone else. But I guess we are going to be able to res him. He's kind of like right out. It's so close. I don't know how I can actually res him. As you see, I'm fumbling trying to get it, but I managed to get him just at the last second as people are starting to die. But as you see, blood decay, perfectly self-sustainable, especially with the rune weapon up. No problems for the first, 30 seconds of that fight. But anyway, this mechanic, I'm not exactly sure what you're supposed to do. There's 3 mobs, and I don't think they have any type of melee or threat table. But I am spreading diseases to all 3, just because it's, of course, a DPS, requirement to improve our DPS there. But I think what you probably should be doing is like bursting down 1. So if everybody was on 1, like I marked a skull, blah blah blah, because they do the same mechanics. They're doing that route. Luckily we got rogue, we got mage. We can get out of these routes pretty easily. But yeah, realistically, you should not be spreading out damage like that. You should definitely be attacking 1 at a time. And we're not doing that in this group. But of course, this is a pretty geared group. These guys are all well above 350. So if you haven't been following, I was able to get to about 345. That's where we're suddenly at, looking at Mythic Plus and enjoying our stay and such. It's a lot more comfortable when you're geared like this. And yeah, it's made me a lot more interested in testing it. But other people have been doing Mythic Plus the whole time, so they're way above 3. Like, they're like 3. I've seen people who are like 365, which I think is pretty nuts. Obviously, you can get lucky with Titan Forges, but yeah, I don't know. So here again, the trash is only going to get even more complicated from now on until the second boss, there's going to be kind of these 3 mini bosses. They're going to have a very specific, there's really only 2 mechanics. One of them, though, is that rune mechanic. It's kind of buggy. You can see it on the ground, but it gives them and us a lot of haste. So it's good to stand in it, but of course, not necessarily good to have the mob in it. It's a bit fiddly. Earlier on in the beta, actually might have been the alpha, you can grip the mob. You cannot grip the mob anymore. So I used to, of course, love gripping the mob out of that and then standing in it myself. But that does not appear to be an option anymore. And that's one of the things that I do lament about Death Knight. It seems like a lot less mobs are grippable. Not that mob. That mob's grippable. And this mob is going to basically mimic the boss. So the 2 things that we just talked about, they're actually very present on the next boss, which I'll love to talk about when we get there, because something really bizarre happens on the fight. But otherwise, another kind of really important trash mob is up here in this room. We're going to pull it all together because it's not fortified. Should be no problem. But these mobs, they do a lot of damage. You know, they do the same mechanics that we've been talking about, the water blast and all that. But the main mechanic there is that big green circle that you can kind of see. It's kind of obscured by the Frost Mage's abilities there. But when you stand in it, I think it's 75% damage reduction. It's a very large reduction. And obviously, if the mob is in it, then we're just not going to do any damage to it. Now, I do foolishly leave the mob in it because I'm bad at the video game. But we quickly realized I saw the Death Knight try to grip it out, and then I realized, oh, right, it's standing in the thing. But he's going to do this channel. And you want to yourself stand in the reduction, because that channel will do, I think, like well over 100% of your health. At least maybe on fortified it might, but right now the healer is having no problem keeping up with it. But yeah, you obviously don't want, you know, if you can mitigate that damage, you should do it. So these are things that are helping you learn the bosses, which I think is quite cool. And now this pack here, typically I would have pulled the little storm elemental in front of us with it as well. But, you know, we're being a little safe here. I don't want to wipe. We have a pretty good group overall, but, you know, you never know when you could wipe. So we just kind of deal with these trash packs back to back. And one of them here is this is basically another mini boss. It's not a mini boss, of course, but it has mechanics that are unique to this mob. It's the only mob type in the dungeon. And that one is going to do like a lightning bolt at a person. I can easily see, especially with raging, but also fortified, that type of mob, you know, being like the Thunder Callers and Halls of Valor. And then they did that AoE cast. And yet again, with, you know, raging, if he gets off during raging, I think you might actually see it. You're going to see it later. There's another similar mob type that really crushes us with raging. But as you see, that lightning bolt gets shot out. Okay, here we go with raging. Look at how much. That's a lot of damage, man. That's tyrannical right there, boys. That's a lot of damage with raging. So, yeah, I can imagine that this trash is really going to slow people down. So, you know, especially, and another funny thing, I'm glad he dropped that fish. I was just about to think about that. The fish feast is still giving like % of versatility. It seems like it's giving less than it was in Legion, but it still seems like it might be the best feast in the game. I don't know what to think about that. If the Dark Moon food is going to be best in slot again, I'm going to have to stock up. But anyway, yeah, so that's that. What we have here, though, is another great pull. Really, you're seeing truly flexing the Death Knight strengths, almost you know, topping the healing for a good portion, especially while Bone Storm is up. If you guys haven't been following the stream or the discussions, Bone Storm is absolutely beautiful. It might be my favorite spell in the game right now. When you have it up, you are made, you know what how the Hulk is in the Marvel Extended Universe. You're basically that, okay? You are doing unbelievable amounts of damage, an uncomprehendable amount of damage, and an uncomprehendable amount of DPS, or HPS as well, of course. And it's really fun. It really is fun to see. You know, there's going to be, you might not see it in this dungeon, but there's a couple times where that thing just ticks me up all the way to full within 2 ticks. But anyway, let's talk about this boss, because this is probably one of the most unique bosses ever in the game. Now we aggro trash. I should have pulled more trash, whatever. But there's two mobs on this boss, okay? The chick is a caster. It's actually a guy, I don't know, whatever. It's a caster, and it does, you know, pretty decent amount of damage with this nature thing. But the problem is you get this stacking. You see, it's like a little tornado buff. They each put a buff on you. The tornado one makes you take more and more nature damage. And it's shooting out these tornadoes. So if you're getting hit by those tornadoes, as you see, they get sped up. That rune there gives you haste and speeds everybody up, moves faster as well. So if the tornadoes run through that haste rune, then they get sped up too. But the main problem is that boss is going to get sped up too. So I actually got knocked off because I got hit by one of those tornadoes. And yeah, that caused the boss to reset. So that's pretty embarrassing. But regardless, that's not what you're supposed to do. So what I was trying to get at there was that the main, like the male, like the big hulking guy, he's going to do this cleave. He's going to slow you, and he's going to hit you for a good amount of damage. So you want to face that away. And then whenever he like powers up, he goes like Super Saiyan, he's going to start hitting very, very, very hard. So at that point, you'd want to kite. But of course, if you're slowed, you can't, right? But he's like very slow. So as long as you have a speed boost of any kind, you'll be able to kite. But if she does the like rune on the ground that speeds him up, he will run at you at full speed, as you see. So you can't kite. So I don't know. This fight, it's only 6, whatever. Not necrotic. This is probably going to be a really tough fight on necrotic. I could already tell. But the only other mechanic there is that the teal portal, or not a portal, it's like a rune, whatever. You want to go in that. It removes the stacks of the wind debuff that we've been talking about as well. So you kind of want to, damage dealers want to stand in the haste one. You want to clear your stacks with the defense one. And as a tank, you want to face the main boss away. You want to quickly burst down the other boss, interrupt it as often as you possibly can, and then kite if you absolutely need to, and don't get hit by tornadoes. It's a lot to do, and this is something that I think we're going to see a lot more in Mythic Plus. These fights in general, I mean, the first fight wasn't too bad, but the rest of the fights in here, they have a lot of stuff going on, and we're pretty overgeared. I don't know, overgeared 345 for a 6. I think that's probably right around where Blizzard would want it. So I'm definitely, I'm not ill prepared, but I could see this, if you're doing this on like a 20 in the future to come, doing this on 20 tyrannical, this is a lot of mechanics, man. And it makes me think of some of the bosses that cause the people fits on Legion, that they're very, very basic, but the numbers are just too tuned high, they're way too dangerous. So if some of these mechanics are tuned that high and you have to deal with all of these things, oh, it's going to be very interesting, man. Now, here's another interesting pack. The mob I just marked with the skull, it's going to do this cast. Every time that cast gets off, it's going to do more the next time it happens. So we want to have a very strict interrupt rotation. And of course, we have interrupts through Death Grip as well. You can't stun them apparently, but as you see here, going off on the DPS and the HPS chart. Looking pretty good, of course. We have a good DPS group, so they're outpacing me by a large margin. But those mobs that were near that pack, now we're going to do something really weird here. I don't know what's going on here. Oh yeah, so the rogue goes over there for some reason, and then the mage pulls it. It's going to cause a pretty funny argument. I would recommend reading chat for the next 20 or 30 seconds, or maybe even more. It's a pretty weird little argument. It's really exemplary of what's happening on the beta. But anyway, what I was trying to say was there's these little like skeletons. I don't know. They're kind of like they have this bone shield. They're kind of floating, and they can just be dispelled. They have almost no health. They have like 1 health basically. But if you dispel them, that's like their full health is the dispel. So we've seen this in a couple dungeons. Really makes Blood Elves very desirable, actually. Blood Elf ratio was so overpowered in dungeons for a very long time, and it's actually going to be even, I think it's going to be just as desirable in some dungeons. So we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, interrupts are more important, but anyway, look at that. So the mage blames the rogue for some reason. He said that the rogue went over there, but he was in stealth, and look at how he replies. Jesus Christ. This is the problem I've been having with the beta. Unfortunately, a lot of the people on the beta are taking a very weird approach to testing this content. It's almost like if they don't want to test it, they just want to, I don't know, I'm not sure. But anyway, pretty funny little back and forth there you're going to see between the rogue and the mage there for a bit. They're both good players, but yeah, realistically, no need to argue about something so basic. So anyway, another one of these mob types. As you see, it's the purple shadow bolt looking icon on my debuff slot up there above the Mythic Plus timer box. It's stacking up pretty high. We already got 4 stacks in this pack, and of course, that's my choice. I pulled it without the whole group here, so we didn't have all the interrupters present, but people have to recognize this, and I could already see the group onus being a big problem with Mythic Plus. People are just simply not willing to do an auxiliary role. And a lot of this is going to be centered around simply not DPSing when threat is a problem. I had a big problem with this on the Brewmaster the other day. And we talked about this a bit on stream as well, but I was having trouble doing good damage on Brewmaster. But on top of that, I was doing Freehold, and there's that mob type that knocks you back and then automatically chooses a new target. So I don't know if that's intended, but the people are getting threat, and they're dying. And they're running all around. That's the big problem. The mob throws me at another player and then chooses another player. So it's throwing me at somebody who's like 30 yards away, and then I can't get threat back on the mob that is now switched to a DPS. So I was like, guys, can you please stay together? And they're like, can you please get good, basically? And I was like, you don't know the mechanic or what? Like, and people aren't willing to accept that threat has changed. You know, this is 2018. It's not necessarily 2004, but it's time to play the game like you actually care about the group and not just yourself. So if people aren't going to interrupt, if people aren't going to use their utility, if people aren't going to, you know, care about their own threat, their own survival, these Mythic Pluses are really going to challenge people way more than Legion. And I think a lot of people are in for a rude awakening when you realize just how difficult and dangerous some of these packs can be, especially if you're going to be ripping threat. You know, if the tank is doing everything you can just to survive, pumping all DPS, all runic power, whatever, all your materials, your resources into DPS, or into survival, that is, and not DPS, you're probably going to have trouble keeping threat. Like right now, I'm doing about half the threat, half the damage of the damage dealers, if not about the same when we have CDs up. So I have no problems with threat in this dungeon. But, you know, it probably is going to become a problem at some point. There's going to be mechanics like Necrotic where you're going to have to be out of range occasionally. And if you're not hyper aggressive as a tank, the damage dealers are going to have more uptime on the mob than you will. And that's not necessarily a problem for me, honestly. I hate to tell you. That's a problem for the damage dealer. Or you can go make a thread and complain to Blizzard. One of the two. But I can't keep thread if I have to kite. So, you know, you're thinking, what ways can I not kite? What ways can I stay in range? What ways can I maximize my damage? That's all well and good. Not every tank thinks that way. So I definitely think, especially if you guys are playing melee, you know, with the increased propensity for threat there, yeah, you guys have a long road ahead of you if you're going to be bursting to, say, like 40k DPS like I'm seeing some people doing, and then fucking running around in circles when every single mob is attacking you. And I don't know, I think it is going to really change the way the game is played. I think hunters, we talked about this, Tokes was actually bringing this up. I think hunters and rogues are going to be meta, very high meta again. In fact, it's, you know, quite obvious that they bring one of the best utilities in the game now because of that. Potentially, you might see things like a Brewmaster, again, like we talked about on the video yesterday, and maybe even Paladin with the bubble taunt. I haven't really found a lot of use for that. I haven't tested it myself, but I'm sure that's very valuable as well. Any type of AoE taunt is always going to be nice, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, these packs are not necessarily challenging anybody. I'm doing quite a lot of DPS, you know, comparative to my other tanks, and these people are at least willing to give me the first global. That's really the big thing. Like, if you don't get the first global, if somebody else pulls instead of you, you're pretty much done. You're never really going to out-threat them unless you're basically doing as much damage as they are, because, you know, they've effectively got twice the uptime on you. If they get one global ahead of you, assuming that you get the next global and theirs is their second, and they've already done 100% more globals than you. You know what I mean? So that's already double the threat that you would need to do just to catch up to them. Of course, that's what taunt is for. But if we're talking about an AoE pack where somebody rushes in as a Windwalker and just goes full Berserks mode, then yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's a very interesting dungeon. These two bosses yet to come, are something that we talked about a bunch way back when we did this on Zero. It was definitely overtuned. It's a lot easier now, a lot more geared now. People know the dungeon, but don't pre-pot like this early like I did. I'm such an idiot. Wait until he throws out the Shadow Bolt at Rexar or whatever, and then go full man mode. But of course, this boss is going to mind control you. Now, I do something kind of stupid. I kind of bait the rogue into a dumb mechanic here. He's going to spawn these purple orbs, and then he's going to mind control somebody. In order to break the mind control, they have to take a certain amount of damage. The best way to take that amount of damage is to run through these orbs. It makes you take a bunch of damage, and it soaks the orbs. But what I did was I used a Vamp, or whatever, not Vamp, Icebound Fortitude to soak the orbs, because they do stun you, and they do a lot of damage. Which is stupid, because now the rogue doesn't have enough damage taken to actually get broken. Later on, he brings it up, blames the mage. Yet again, they're still bitter about the conversation they had earlier. But realistically, we're 4-manning this fight from the get-go. So that's not good. I don't know what the sweet spot is here. When I've done this in the past, you can't get all 5, I don't think, unless you have some kind of crazy speed boost. Or maybe the problem was that the person would just die. I think like the 4th one would break the mind control. So the 5th one has to be broken by someone else. So I figured it'd be a good idea to get 2. I accidentally got 3. With my CD, but realistically I was trying to get 2, so I think that would probably have worked if the rogue got the 2 and then got the 1 all the way out at range. But as you see, the other one's still chasing the mage. Frankly, this guy is a bit clueless. Not that the rogue was right for arguing about it, but yeah, frankly a bit clueless. But it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out poorly in the end. We killed a rogue finally. He was doing a lot of damage to us, but regardless, I think this fight is pretty interesting. It's got a very unique mechanic, that being the mind control and the soak. So, I don't know. Again, I think we're going to really see some mistakes being made on that fight on high tyrannical. And I guess it kind of depends on how the whole mechanic suite scales, right? Like, I assume you get a lot more health. Like, if the boss has more health, do we get more health? Because if not, think about this. If the orbs, say, do 5 times more damage than they did there, but when you're mind controlled, you have the same health that you normally have, then you're only going to be able to soak 1 before it breaks the mind control. Something like that, right? That's going to really change the encounter. So I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work out, but presumably Blizzard has some idea and plan for that. Now these eels, they do this like shadow debuff. I seem to take a lot of shadow damage, especially on this final pack that we fight. And then they aggro randomly. I don't know what necessarily caused that, but you'll see while we're fighting these mobs, I think we kill one of them. Those eels just kind of spawn. They kind of just come out of the water from us. I don't know how we aggroed them, but the whole I don't know. There's still a lot of weird evading and bugs and stuff like that. But the mobs we're marking with Skull are actually mobs that are part of the fight too. Both of these mobs are, but this one is especially important because if you don't interrupt it, it heals to full. At least it did on 0 when we did this months ago. I haven't seen it on Mythic Plus. I haven't seen it heal on Mythic Plus. But on Heroic, I think we did it on Heroic. Maybe it was normal. They don't actually heal to full. But as you see, mobs constantly evading, constantly resetting threat. I don't know what's happening here, but it's a little worrying, guys. We got about 5 weeks until this stuff is out, of course. It won't be on Mythic Plus for another 8 weeks, presumably. But yeah, you don't really want mobs evading while you're fighting them. That's not a good thing. And you certainly don't want things aggroing. But anyway, this boss, I think, is the pinnacle. I think it's probably the quintessential difficult end boss of Mythic Plus. Something I, like I said, talked about all these months ago when we tested this on 0. It's actually a very unique fight. It's kind of similar to the Ankahaji, whatever. I'm not an Egyptian, so I can't say that word. I'm also not an old god, so I can't say that word. But very similar to that Wrath 5-man final encounter where he takes you into another room, kind of like another phase, and you have to do a task. Now, the tank and the healer's job is to kill this ad. I'd say the good thing to do here is to kill this ad as fast as possible because then you can go and help the other players. But the other players are in a very particular situation where they're fighting these, those mind sucker looking things, and they have to dodge these tentacles as well, taking a lot of damage from that, having to survive without a healer. The quicker we kill this, the faster we can get in there and heal them and help tank that mob. But the main thing is they have to interrupt. And if they don't interrupt, the mob is going to heal to full and they will never kill it. Now, we had a big problem with this earlier in the beta where we had 2 warlocks and I think it was like a rogue or something like that. And we simply could not kill it. Now, that's pretty funny. Nobody interrupts. My interrupts on CD, but somebody lusts. It's like, he's got like 100% of his orb on, right? You just got to interrupt. So anyway, you come out of that phase, you got to interrupt because he's got this massive absorb. But after that, there's these ads. These ads are going to get to him, and I think they're going to just do splash damage. People are, again, just not doing the mechanics, so the mobs are not. They're like, I mean, look at, there's mobs at full health after they've been out for like 20 seconds. They're just going to get to him. Ring of Peace was a great play, but unfortunately, the mob is going to run right through the boss. You can't stop that. It doesn't look like it does damage, which is definitely not good. You don't want to go into this phase at low health because there's a lot of damage that the actual damage dealers cannot heal through. And we almost wiped to it, but luckily I get in just in time, battle res, and the healer gets in and do some healing. But yeah, so I think you really got to consider this a DPS phase for the tank. You do take a lot of damage, and it is tyrannical, so who knows? Is this mob based on tyrannical, based on fortified? I'm not sure. But regardless, you really got to make sure that you are getting through that part as quickly as possible because the quicker you can come in here and help the damage dealers, the better. It almost makes me think that it should be the other way around, though. Now that I think about it, it's almost like if the damage dealers are supposed to burn through this and then come and help the tank. And it's almost like if the tank's job is simply to survive and then the damage dealers come and finish the mob. I don't know what Blizzard might have thought, but anyway, that's it. Shrine of the Storm, +6. Highest key I've now completed. We upgraded it 1 time, so that's good. I got a very good trinket, 365. So I'll never get used to 365. But anyway, I show a little bit of the DPS and the healing. You can check that out. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I really like this dungeon. Really liking Mythic Plus so far. Haven't done anything crazy. 6 is the highest I've done. Hopefully, maybe we could see a 10 by the end of the beta. But at this point, I'd imagine I'm not going to be spending a lot more time on the beta. So reminder, stream tomorrow if you're around. I'm still not sure what I'm going to be doing, but there'll definitely be a stream tomorrow. Then Wednesday, I got to start getting ready for vacation. I'll be gone for a full week. Otherwise, after that, I'm very excited to get back and check out the pre-patch, check out BFA beta, maybe do some more Mythic Plus on the beta. Obviously, if Mythic Plus is available on live, do that as well. But yeah, I don't know. That's everything. So thanks for watching. Check out the damage breakdown. You see the mage's damage. You see my damage, a lot of blood boil. See my healing, a lot of bone storm. So very good. Anyway, thanks for watching. We will see you guys in the next one.